welcome to Rabbit. We're so excited you're here. Got a little feedback. I'm Brittany Sweeney. I am the communications manager with the Livestock Conservancy, and I am super excited to welcome Charlene and Vernon Brown here to talk about silver fox rabbits today. It's going to be so fun.
Yeah, I'm Charlene Couch, and I'm here to talk with Vernon too. Vernon Brown of Brownies, Bunnies. Real quickly, first, we're going to show you a short video clip from ManaPro, who is sponsoring all these video chats this year. And take it away, Brittany.
All right, here we go. Stick with us 1 minute.
Champions, colleagues,
roommates,
and personal trainers.
Whatever role they play,
they're an important part of our lives.
In their quiet way,
and their not so quiet way.
they keep us young.
On our feet,
on the go.
They pull us back to nature.
And push us toward the next adventure.
And as much as we count on them,
they count on us all the more.
To nurture their lives.
With the same commitment.
To protecting them.
Helping them grow.
And thrive.
Treating them.
As well as they treat us. By giving them a little more of our lives. Because no matter what role they play, out here
or in here,
we're here to make their lives the best they can be.
ManaPro, nurturing life.
All right, welcome back, and thank you to ManaPro for sponsoring Rabbit Chats today. We appreciate your support, and thank you to them for featuring all the amazing heritage breeds you just saw. Hopefully, we'll get some rabbits in there next time. But that's all right.
We'll have rabbits there today.
Exactly. Well, take it away, Vernon. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe some of your special guests?
Absolutely. Well, first off, I do use ManaPro. So that's the only rabbit feed my rabbits have ever been on. So, and I use the 16%. I'm very happy with it. Yeah, I'm Vernon Brown. I live in Kingsville, Maryland, and I've been associated with the Livestock Conservancy for quite a while. I go back. I have stopped calling it Outback. It was always the American Livestock Breed Conservancy to me, and we go back. We raised Cotswold sheep for a long while, and I do believe I was very helpful in bringing some of their numbers forward. And we go back. I know my son is 30. He'll be 32 in July, and he was an infant when we would go down to Virginia to Stanton when Don Bixby would have a tent set up and showing people rare breeds. And so we go back a ways, and we had some fun trips. I still remember being in the tent, and they had fainting goats. And we thought it was really fun to walk up and look at them and watch them faint. You know, so but we love the Livestock Conservancy, and I've always had a heart for the heritage breeds. My garden is full of heritage tomatoes. You know, it's a different theology, we'll call it, to go back to what for up till the last 100 years or so was the world. You know, and it really, I know your mission is what I agree with, that the world has become industries that have replaced so many of these older breeds that built the modern breeds. And now what we're seeing, even with silver fox, the insurgency of some of these heritage breeds is because people, you know, we saw shelves that were minus toilet paper. And I've had a lot of people calling, like, they're wondering what they can add to their homestead to make sure they have meat sources and things like that. And rabbits in general, when you're talking a meat breed of rabbit like silver fox, is a great choice for a lot of people when they might even be in a neighborhood where they can't have a rooster, you know, and things like that. But you can have some rabbit cages in your garage, you know. So that's kind of where I started with. I got out of sheep because I'm too old to raise sheep anymore and handle them and do all that kind of thing. And about 5 to 6 years ago, I guess, I decided that I needed a rabbit. I've always had a rabbit as a pet growing up and different times in my life. I can't explain it. I've just always enjoyed rabbits and never bred them or showed them or was in 4-H. That wasn't what I did. But I decided for my garden, I needed a rabbit for the manure. And I ended up just so I thought, well, if I'm going to get a rabbit, actually looked over the Livestock Conservancy breed list and whatever. And I contacted a lady that lives in Maryland that had silver fox. And when I saw them, first off, I fell in love with them on paper, the description about them. But when I saw the rabbit, I was like, oh my goodness, that's the rabbit I had when I was a kid. And we had a farm. My father had a business downtown, and people, when you have land, people drop off animals to you. It's like, would you take this? So my pet rabbit was this really big black rabbit with white hairs all over on it. And as a kid, I just thought she was getting old and turning gray. Well, lo and behold, when I saw a silver fox, I thought that's the rabbit I had when I was growing up. And my mom actually found a picture not long ago of me and my sister with our Easter basket standing in the yard, all dressed up for Easter, that picture that everyone takes. And in the background, I could see the rabbit in her pen on the ground, and it was a silver fox. I mean, I could tell by the picture. So anyway, that's how I got started. I got started with silver fox, getting one for manure a few years ago. And then I decided, well, if I'm going to have this, and it was pedigreed. And I thought, well, if I'm going to have this animal, this is stupid. Let's go get a buck, right? And so I went back to the lady and I got a buck, and that's how I started with silver fox. So people ask me now, along the way, how many rabbits do you have? And I always tell them probably more than I had this morning, because they're rabbits. But they are a great animal for manure. People ask me, why do you raise rabbits? My first answer is always because they make great tomatoes. So but silver fox is my choice of rabbits, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And hopefully I want to make sure that I talk about it in the context of Livestock Conservancy. We do have, if you hear any noise in here, I am sitting in our little dining room off the kitchen. And in the kitchen, we have Australorp chickens that are 3 weeks old that have to go outside, that were hatched in the incubator. And as of last night, we started hatching turkeys. So I have two turkeys over there in the brooder and 2 hatching out, and I think there's 10 eggs altogether. But I also have my turkey sitting on eggs out in the pen. So, it's kind of like a heritage kitchen.
I love it.
But let me tell you a little bit about silver fox before I get distracted. And I'm going to read a little bit of this because I want to make sure I get some of it right. But silver fox was actually the second truly American-bred rabbit. Okay, so developed in America in the 1920s. The first rabbit that was bred in America, actually, I guess, I don't want to say designed, but put together, and somebody bred it and became a breed, was the American Blue. But the second one was the silver fox. And that was in the 20s. A man named Walter Garland out in Canton, Ohio, or North Canton, Ohio. He really had a vision to have a blocky type of rabbit that was a very utilitarian meat animal, right? With really good fur. And from what I've read, he actually had self black. Self means solid color, okay, in rabbit world. So he had a solid black checker giant, okay, but it uniquely had some white hairs sparsed around over the hide or fur. He also raised English silvers, which is a smaller animal, and I think they get to be like 6 pounds or something. But he had this vision to create something that looked more like a silver, but that was big, like a bigger animal that would be much more utilitarian as a meat breed, but also would produce this incredible fur, right? Mm-hmm. And I always have to stop myself because I want to tell people and say, well, if you would think back to 1929, well, you can't. But if you would think of the era of the Roaring 20s, right? Unlike today, women all had big fur collars on their coats, and fur was, a product. But if you look at a silver fox, they are called that because the way he kept breeding them and selecting them, the fur really became a unique fur that looked like silver fox. And speaking of the fur, to me, that is one of the genetic standouts of a silver fox, okay? Because there are 50 some breeds of rabbits that are registered or not registered, sanctioned or by ARBA, the American Rabbit Breeders Association. Silver fox is the only breed that has what's called a stand-up fur. And I'll show you that in a minute. When you push the hair from the tail to the head, it remains standing. It's not a flyback fur until you push it back down. Also, they have a very, should have a longer fur. The standard of perfection says 1.5 inches. They do exist, but they're not always 1.5 inches. But you want a long fur that has some density to it. But it also, the other unique genetic implement that he got in there was the silvering, the flecks of white hair that are throughout the black that make it look like a silver fox. And so that's unique to the silver fox. Other animals have silvering, but they don't have that stand-up fur that really looks like more like a fur. And I always think if you would look at if you see a silver fox pelt, and if it was on a collar or a hat made out or whatever, you would never think that was a rabbit pelt. You know, it just looks much more like we'll call it a fur, right? So they were developed in the 1920s. They were in 1929 was the official recognition by the American Rabbit Breeders Association. And he really did work for a long while by selection and calling animals. From what I understand, it was 14 years of working and calling and creating this animal called the silver fox that he developed. Originally, he developed it in black and blue. Okay, so I won't go into all the colors of rabbits. And some breeds, I laugh, have like 47 colors because when you get behind them at a show, you think they're done and they have 4 more colors to do. But silver fox basically have 2 varieties now, and they're working on the 3rd. But originally, it was black and blue. Black has always been a standard color, but blue lost the numbers in the 70s and lost its sanctioning with ARBA or whatever. So blue is in the process. It has what's called a COD. So they're in the process of getting recertified, but that's going to take a couple years. They lost an opportunity and didn't make it the last go round. So now it's has been renewed and they're working on it. Chocolate actually got sanctioned last October. And we have to give hats off to Mira Collins out. I don't even know. I'm not going to say her state because I'm going to get it wrong. It's Midwest. But she spent 15 years developing the chocolate and working really hard. And the last presentation came down to the wire to get the final approval, and COVID hit, and her state had the rabbit virus quarantine her. And the committee for ARBA worked it out that she gave her final presentation over like a Zoom meeting presentation. She had literally a studio in her basement, I saw, with lights and everything so they could see it, and had just obviously did an amazing job and got the chocolates approved. So chocolate is now an official variety. I do have chocolate. I'm not going to have any here to show today, but I do have a black and a blue here that I'm going to show you. Blue was always a standard color for them. So to finish that history, it was 1971, and this brings us to Conservancy. 1971, the National Silver Fox Rabbit Club was founded and officially chartered with ARBA, the American Rabbit Breeders Association. In 1971, this rabbit breed was basically almost extinct, like so many of the heritage breeds that are critically rare. And it was 15 members that were the first people that chartered the Silver Fox Rabbit Club, Rabbit Breeders Club. So I've talked to, there's a lady named Margaret who I show with, who's been around with Silver Fox longer than I have. And she was telling me, back then, she's heard tales about how people would drive halfway across the country to get a rabbit bred, because the gene pool was so small, and that that the efforts that these people put in, we have to just bow before them and realize that we're standing on their shoulders, and that's where, to me, stewardship comes in with when you're raising, because what we do today is going to affect generations to come after us. And I was very happy in talking to our president of our Silver Fox National Club. When we talk, we've turned the corner. I don't think we have to worry about disappearing right now. We're not extinct. We have numbers now, but we want to see quality, not just quantity. And that takes a commitment of stewardship and how you raise your rabbits. And that's some of the things I want to hit on today. The numbers in 2021 at the ARBA convention, I have to tell you, I was not there, but I know there was over 120 silver fox shown at the convention last October in Louisville, Kentucky. So that's pretty awesome. And locally, where the shows I've been to, just recently, I went to Richmond. In the spring, this is spring show. Well, in the fall show at Richmond that I was at, I think we had 28 rabbits, and we were really excited. It's like, wow, we got 28 silver fox here. That's pretty cool. And then this spring we went back and we had 41 silver fox in the show. So,
Right.
I think exponentially we're growing. And part of that is we're seeing community building and mentoring taking place, and actually inviting people to come to shows. And I know my first show, I have to tell you, a lady that mentored me died last year when her house caught on fire. And Sam Cheshire, she lived up in York, Pennsylvania. And Sam was my first, example of a silver fox breeder. And Sam was Sam. But I decided, well, if I'm going to raise this animal, I got to go to a show and meet other people and find out what I really need to, find out a lot that I don't know. Right. And I truly believe it's really easy to stand in your own field. And I developed this thought when I raised sheep. It's easy to stand in your own field and think you have good animals. Okay. And when you go to a show, you may find out you have awesome animals, or you may find out yours aren't so awesome, compared to something else, but it really inspires you to, when you're there, when you see other people's animals, to do better and keep breeding forward, But anyways, I decided I'm going to go to a show. I went to Westminster, Maryland. It was a small show, and I had no idea what I was doing. I entered 3 animals, and I had them in dog crates. And I got out of my car and I looked like deer in headlights and had no idea where to park, how to get where I'm going to go. But I was going to figure it out, right? And Sam Cheshire was sitting across the driveway on her tailgate smoking a cigarette. And she saw me get my rabbits out and she hollered across, "Hey, you got silver fox?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "You want to use my cart?" And that was my introduction. She came over and she said, "I'll watch the rabbits while you go park the car. I'll take you in, show you where to go, blah, 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 blah." It made me just totally feel welcome and relaxed. And as only Sam would be. Then she looked at me and she looked at my dog crates and she said, "And then I'll take you in and show you where you can buy some real carriers." But if it wasn't for her that day, you know what I'm saying? It's like that's what I want to do at every show. I'm online in a group inviting people, "Hey, come on out to show. If you've never shown before, and I'll get phone calls. What does variety mean? They're trying to enter for their first show and they don't know what that means color. Well, they don't put color on the sheep. They put variety, right? So, and they know somebody when they get there. So that's part of building community. So that's where we're at. Let me turn it back over to you for a couple minutes. And while you take over, I'm going to get a guest.
All right, special guest coming. One of the things I was looking at is that in 2010, silver fox were critically endangered on our conservation priority list. And thanks to the work of folks like Vernon and Sam, these guys are well on their way to working their way off the list. It's going to take a few more years, but man, look at these. I mean, why wouldn't they be more popular?
One of the things that I didn't talk about is in what's the standard of a silver fox is size. Okay, so remember he wanted a larger meat animal. So a silver fox, this is a doe, this is Quill, and Quill is at SOP. A doe at a senior weight should be between 10 and 12 pounds. A buck is a pound less. So a buck should be between 11, where am I? 9 and 11. Turn to the camera, Sweeney. So the silver fox fur, you can see, I hope on the camera, the silvering that is interspersed in here. But when I brush her from the tail to the butt, we're going to see if you can see this. It may be hard to see on the camera, but it's standing up where she's also starting to molt. Where I have to push it, I can push it down, okay?
Yeah.
And then it will stay down, okay? So you can, if I can brush this down, you can see where it's standing down. And if I push it up, it stays up. And if I put my finger in here, you can see it's got some length to it. It's hard to tell unless you're blowing on it, and you're not doing that. But it's past my first knuckle. So we're talking at least 1.25 inches to 1.5 inches, okay? She's also really wide, if I can turn see wider ones, but you have a good width to this animal, and it runs all the way back they should have a wider neck. They shouldn't be real narrow in the neck. If you can watch my hand, I'm going to grab her here, and then if I go back, I'm staying wide. So she's wide in the front too, and she is really shedding. She's getting ready to be bred. I will brag on this girl. She is my first grand champion. She has 6 legs, which anybody knows anything about showing rabbits. And I will explain it to you so you understand it a little, because the way it was explained to me, I never understood the term legs. And when I did buy a buck that had 4 legs. And when I told that to my wife, I said, he's got 4 legs. My wife said, well, for the money you paid, I hope he has 4 legs. But when you show a rabbit and you have to win a class, so she's a doe. If she was in a doe's class and got first place, and there was at least 5 on the table and at least 3 breeders at the table, then you would win a leg. Or if you get either best of breed, and there's enough breeders and enough animals, you have to have at least 10 in the show and 3 breeders. And if you get best opposite sex, then you earn a leg. So one of those legs has to be as a senior, because they have to see that they made weight and those kind of things. And unlike other breeds of animals where you just register an animal, you can't just, most registrations are usually by birth. Because they were born with this parent and this parent, and you can register it with with a pedigree. It can be a registered animal, in other words, with that breed's. If it's a sheep or whatever, you register it with the Cotswold Association. But with rabbits, they're registered with ARBA, the American Rabbit Breeders Association, and generally people only register animals that have done well, that they don't register just all their animals. But she got registered, okay, and she's a registered grand champion. But to register her, you have to take her and put her on a table before a registrar, and they get looked at, and they have to meet SOP standards, standard of perfection, okay? So they have to look at it and say, yes, this meets the standards of being a silver fox. They will weigh her and make sure she's between 10 and 12 pounds and things like that. So when you see a registered animal in the rabbit world, it had to be approved to be registered, okay? And to be a grand champion, they've gone for at least 3 different judges at 3 different shows and have done well, okay? So anyway, this is Quill. That's a black one. And I've got one more to show you real quick. Blue is the other color I told you.
Ooh.
This is Sweet Pea. And she has not been shown much. And she is pregnant right now. So I'm not going to push her around too much. But if you can see, again, she has a very dense fur, which that's something I like to add to some, but I also want to add some much more length to hers and some other things with her. But I do really like her type. I was taught by Sam, and you'll hear this a lot from people. You build the barn and then you paint it. So you want to work on the body, and then part of it. It's not just the fur; it's the type. You want type, meaning the structure of the animal. One of the things that silver fox should have is originally, I think, from what I've read, they were developed with a much longer neck, but the SOP has changed over the decades, and they, as a meat animal, they should start rolling up right from the neck, and then they should have a fairly tall loin that's depth. So it's a meat animal, so you should have a pretty good loin on here, and they should also go all the way down to the table on the back end. They shouldn't just fall off. So anyway, all right, let me put her away, and then we'll get back to me.
They're beautiful, Vernon.
They really are.
Any questions at this point?
Oh, yeah, we got some love coming in. Let's see. Hi, Eric and Charlene. Thanks for joining us today. We're glad you're here. They say hi.
Eric and Colleen also keep silver fox, I think.
Yes. And I have this, Eric, I have the slide of your book to show at the end, because that's the only book I recommend to everybody. So
That's amazing.
the best rabbit book ever.
Hi, Zahara. Thanks for joining us today. We're glad you're here. Zahara says Sam was an incredible breeder and a wonderful mentor to those looking to learn. Aww. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for joining us. We're glad you're here. Sarah agrees that Sam was the best. Let's see. Sahar says, funny enough, one of my first shows was Silver Fox. I didn't have a cart either, and Sam was happy to offer yet again.
There you go.
So it sounds like she was a wonderful mentor and helped a lot of people.
She was. And, just to end talking about Sam, well, we shouldn't end it, but as a community in the Silver Fox this year at the convention, Sam always wore tie-dye shirts to shows, and she used to say it was because it didn't show the fur, like the hair. So before the convention this year, the board and all got together, and they actually took orders and sold tie-dye shirts to raise money. And it had a thing on the back and then the little thing on the front in memory of Sam. And everybody at the convention, I wasn't there, but I cried when I saw the pictures, because everybody at the Silver Fox show was wearing these tie-dye shirts in honor of Sam, who died last year. So that was pretty awesome as a community.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Hi, Catherine. Thanks for joining us today. Catherine says you have a beautiful Joe.
Thank you. I would agree. You're getting ready to be bred. And I have to say that you have to get one of your legs as a senior to be a champion. And Quill had 2 legs. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I bred her. She had a litter last July, and I needed a senior leg. And she had babies, right? So I thought, I'm never going to get her in condition. And I would weigh her, and she was always above 10 pounds. And after her litter, I would weigh her. She had to be 10 pounds at senior weight. And she would be 9 pounds, 15 ounces. And it's like, come on. So I just left her in a cage, left her alone, fed her every day, and said hi, And when it came down to whatever the show was coming up, I said to her, okay, honey, let's get you out and see what you look like. And she was in awesome fur. She was in awesome condition. I weighed her. She was 10 pounds, like 9 ounces. And I'm like, yes, you're going to go with me. And it was in Pennsylvania at the Sarba, which is a 2-day mini convention kind of show. And this is an example of why you want people to come out to shows and support things. She was on the table. You need 5 breeders on the table if you get first place, right, to get a leg. 3 out of the 4 shows that weekend, she got first place. and there were 4 breeders there was only 4 animals on the table.
Oh,
So
no.
I literally was holding back tears, and they basically, when I told her we got to go one more time, to get this leg, and I didn't think she'd ever get it. And basically Quill said, hold my beer. So the third show that weekend, she was picked as best opposite sex. And for people who don't know what that means, at a show, the best of breed will be the best of that breed there that day. So in other words, the judge would pick who they think is the best silver fox here today. And on that given day, if it was a buck that was chosen to be the best of breed, then they pick the best opposite sex. So they would pick a doe to be the best opposite sex. So on a given day, if a doe won best of breed, then they would have to pick the best buck to be the best opposite sex. So that's what that means for those that may not understand. And I'm just so used to explaining these things because I'm tired of somebody talking over my head. Don't want to use a term. So I will say that she now has 6 legs after the last couple of shows, and she's now retiring to go have more babies. But those 6 legs, there were no first place. It was all best of breed and best opposite that she won those on that. So I'm thrilled with her, and we're ready to have more babies. One of her, the Lord's just blessed me with favor, and sometimes I just shake my head and how sometimes we sell animals to people and start more silver fox somewhere. One of her sons from her litter last July actually was bought by a lady who was visiting her daughter in DC, but she flew it home to California. And so Quill now has a son in California making more silver fox out there.
Awesome.
I had another girl do the same thing. She was in the visiting family in Pennsylvania, and I she wanted a breeding pair to go home with her to Alaska, and I really sounded intelligent because I just read the article in the Rabbit magazine about flying with rabbits, and they said that Alaska Airlines was the friendliest to use. And I said, you don't have to be flying Alaska, do you? So she was, and she actually took 2 rabbits. I actually called Lady Margaret, who has Margaret Funk, has awesome animals, and we put a pair together. Instead of me just coming up with 2 rabbits, it was Margaret's doe and my buck got put in carriers, and her husband and wife took them and put them at their feet as carry-on luggage and flew them to Alaska. So, and I just got word the other day that we now have grandkids in Alaska. So that's pretty
cool. Good work.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
It is exciting, when you get those messages and you think about this breed could have been gone, totally gone. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Vernon. I think that really speaks to the power of community in saving rare breeds. You can't do it by yourself. And
that's absolutely
if you keep
right.
your stock to yourself and kind of hang on to it too tightly, then you're endangering the breed rather than helping. I
think too with the community, I'm one of the administrators for what we call the Virginia Silver Fox Group, or Virginia Silver Fox Breeders page, or whatever it is. And we're actually getting ready to change the name, I think, to the Mid-Atlantic, because we pick up so many people. It's really not Virginia anymore. And I'm in Maryland, but we get questions. I mean, newbies that's what I call them all the time. People just got their first ones, and I'm not going to pick on anybody, but the other day a girl was like on there asking a question, and it's like about, she had rabbits that the doe had babies, but a group she's saying she split them into 2 groups. There's a group of 3 young ones up front, and the rest of them are in the nest out of the 8 that she had. And she's like, should I leave them alone or whatever? So a couple people like myself or somebody else that had a little more experience, not that we're experts, but we've had more experience. She's thinking the mother moved them for some reason. We were saying rabbits never move their young. They're not like cats. They don't pick up they don't pick up their babies and move them. Those babies their eyes are shut till 10 days. So they just make a nest that's usually a divot. And those babies, when they nurse, they crawl around and find the hole again and get down in that divot until mom comes back to nurse them again. Well, what happens, and I've learned this from my own experience, when the hay goes in you got hay going in a square box, you end up with little round corners where there's like divots up in the front. Well, that baby, what it does is crawl around and ends up in a hole in the front. And then another one's looking for, found my brother. And they start scritching around and they actually make another nest. So this is an example of like mentoring and community. So, basically just type in on Facebook. It's like, okay, so this is what happens. Take those babies and put them back in the nest and fill in the hole, right? And that's what she did, So it's just experience, and no different than Sam helped me when you help somebody else. And the goal is what? To have them be successful at raising more silver fox. Okay. One thing I do want to address with to me in stewardship of raising a breed like this, and I do have some slides I was going to show, but it comes down to, we all have heard the saying, and I want to preface this, that this is the Livestock Conservancy. It's not the Pet Conservancy, and a lot of people get it that rabbits are like an awesome pet. They do make an awesome pet, and they're very popular now. And there are quote unquote pet breeds that are only raised for pets. But I will say that going into raising rabbits, and if people are thinking about getting into a meat rabbit, you need to think about what you're going to do with all the rabbits. Okay. So, and the slogan is you breed the best and you eat the rest, and you have to be committed to doing something with all the babies that are not really keepers, because when you breed, I have, I just took some to be processed, but I breed, I have more rabbits in this, but I usually breed 6 rabbits at a time. And then next month I breed 6 more rabbits. So I can use, I don't have them all at once. And so I might have 40 kits, at a time or whatever, or more. But out of that, 40 kits aren't keepers. And if you read Eric Rupp's book, he talks about this, that he had to decide very early on, like, what am I going to do with all these? If I'm going to keep creating really good rabbits, I'm going to have somewhere to put all the other rabbits that aren't so good, right? So somebody asked me, they were talking about this online recently, and I said, the best thing you can add to your rabbitry to create better rabbits, they were talking about bringing in other animals and things like this. And my feeling is the best thing you can do to add to your rabbitry to make better rabbits is more recipes in the kitchen. It's like, may sound silly, but it's like, if you come, the more recipes you come up with, the easier it is to call rabbits. Okay. And the silver fox, you just saw how big that rabbit is. We usually process ours at 16 weeks, and they're between 6 and 8 pounds live. They come back anywhere between 3.5 to 4.5 pounds processed, and rabbit at our house has become, it's basically replaced chicken as a staple meat. And we probably consume a rabbit a week in our house, which doesn't mean one meal. We make a lot of different meals. We just visited my sons for Easter. We were invited to go to my sons and daughter-in-laws for Easter, right? And, oh, by the way, Dad, can you bring a rabbit pie, right? So we took a rabbit pie. But, it's pretty cool that he requested that. So, and I will tell you this. I was looking for a recipe for a rabbit pie, which basically is like chicken pot pie, except we make a big pie, out of it. And how culture has changed. If you think back like World War I and prior to that, rabbit was pretty common. People raised it on their homestead. And even, you hear about the victory gardens in World War II. People were like prodded to raise rabbits because it was a good meat source that you could raise in your backyard. But I was Googling looking for rabbit pie recipes. And I actually found a song that was popular like back in the 20s. And there's a record, and you can look it up on YouTube, right? There's a recording like, and you hear it like, or it's like an old record. But I'll try to sing the first little chorus because it was funny. And it said, on the farm every Friday, on the farm it's rabbit pie day. So that was the chorus.
Wow.
And the rest of the song is like, run, rabbit, run, run.
I love it.
It was, and that was a popular song back in the 20s or the 30s because everybody knew what it meant,
Yeah.
So anyway, that's when it comes, let me finish just with the breed genetics as I think Silver Fox have. And when you read descriptions on the Livestock Conservancy about different animals and breeds, it'll tell you certain things about them that really are true. Sometimes we just gloss over them. Oh, they're good mothers, right? They have a great personality, but if you think about up to 100 years ago, mom had to go milk the cow. So the heritage breeds, the cow had to have a good personality because it wasn't being pushed through a bunch of gates and hooked up to a machine to be milked, right? It was mom going out and the kids were in the yard and whatever. So, Silver Fox are known as a very calm, easy to handle animal, even though they're really big. So they're great for 4-H projects or kids to handle or new people to get started in rabbits because of that personality. And it is, to me, it's genetic. It really is genetic. If you have animals that aren't like that, then they shouldn't be kept, because you want to keep propagating those genetics. Also good mothering. I don't have, and knock on wood, I don't have problems with my mothers. First timers, they might build their nest at the last minute and maybe they just don't know how to put the nest in the box. I literally will put cardboard boxes, build it over there. I put a nest box in 5 days before they're due so that I have some time to play with it. And when they start building a nest over in that corner, which is wrong and not in the box, I rip it out. I put a cardboard box in that spot and I say, try again, and next thing happens, I corral her to getting it into the nest box, right? Because I have a couple days to play. And it's funny. It's kind of like at that point, it's like when you're training your kid to use the potty, it's kind of like, oh, you made poo-poo in the potty. It's like, it's like, yeah, you built your nest in the box. Good girl. So they may be silly, but I have a good time in my rabbitry. But what I'm saying is that's maybe a newbie rabbit that's never had and I just am amazed. Rabbits know how to be rabbits. We have to read the book. Okay. So, but the rabbit, the instinct that they have, you put a box in there and when they're ready to have babies, I stop putting hay in the box because I don't know how to build a nest. I now put the box in and I put shavings in it for moisture, but I put all the hay in the cage and she gathers it up just like a bird builds a nest. She'll gather that hay. It's called stashing. They look like this with their mustache with hay. And then they go in there and build the nest. And I found that I've lost less kits. I very rarely lose a kit under hay anymore. I used to, you'd lose one or two. You find them dead under the hay. And I don't lose them anymore that way because I used to shove the hay in the box and I would marvel at how she'd go in and rearrange it. Right. Well, I started it, but now I just leave it out and she builds the nest, so that's just instinct. And then when she has the babies, it's like, oh my gosh, they clean them up, put them in, they pull hair, and rabbits can tell the temperature, when it's cold, they cover them up more. And when it's, you go in there and it's a warm day this time of year, it's one day it's cold, next day it's warm. You go in and you look and the nest is open where they're exposed, more because mom tells the temperature, and takes care of them. Where we're thinking, oh my goodness, I got to make sure I'm in there. And I do get in the nest, I will say when it comes to temperament, Silver Fox, and I'm sure this happens with all rabbits, but Silver Fox are very gentle animals. But when they have babies in their box, I give them grace. I have some that are just sweethearts, but when they have their babies in the box, they'll bite my hand off, if I'm trying to get in there. Usually they calm down after they've had them for a day or two. But we were at Gettysburg, and there's a judge named Stacy who was judging Silver Fox that day. And she handled about 3 animals, which would have been senior bucks on the first set. And she stopped and she said, I love judging this breed. She said, it's like judging teddy bears. So I just remember that, and it just really describes it because they really are big, and they're a lot of fur, and they're very calm. So until you get to the juniors on the table that don't know what they're doing. So color is we have black and blue is not officially a color. It's got the COD, so they're working on it, but it was always black and blue. Just real blood. There's two colors of rabbits. There's chocolate and there's black. And then there's two dilutes of them. Okay. So if you have black, diluted is a blue. Chocolate diluted is a lilac. Okay. And those, I have all four of those colors, but those are, so blue is easy for me to produce. It's just if you have a dilute in your line, then if both parents put a dilute in, diluted black is blue. And people get confused with that sometimes because they think, oh, if I put two blues together, can I get a chocolate? No, because blues are blacks. They're just diluted, so you're really still using a dominant gene over the chocolate. So anyway, we won't go into a genetics of color lesson. Good mothering, gentle, silvering, stand-up fur, length of fur. I think I covered all the things I wanted to cover on the silver fox as far as their genetics.
Right. Well, you said they're a good rabbit for beginners. If I wanted to find some silver fox rabbits, where would I start?
Well, the first place you should start is the breeders list from the the Livestock Conservancy, which is a great resource. And if somebody's not a member, they're actually serious about conserving the animals, they should join, because you do get people calling you because they see you on that list. The other thing is that I have a waiting list for animals right now. And basically it's partially because and that's a subject that I don't really want to get too harsh on, but I only sell breeding stock that to me, I would keep myself. Okay. So the rest go in the freezer. Okay. And I actually believe that, I get very frustrated when I see it on Facebook and things where Susie Q just had a litter today. She had 8. Who wants one? They'll be ready in 6, 7, 8 weeks, right? And they're already taking reservations for all 8 babies because they're silver fox or whatever they are. They're pedigree, and that doesn't mean they're worth using as breeding stock. And now if you were at a point in the 70s when they were almost extinct, you may have to do that and keep improving, and every generation you keep improving. But you see what I'm saying? It's like I get very frustrated and that's why I always teach somebody. And when somebody says they're interested in, getting breeding stock from me, for what purpose? What's your purpose? And what I want you to understand that they're not all keepers, and sheep, we dealt with this too, where it's, Susie Q has, I have to keep that one because it's Susie's baby, and you just, fine, but that's not how you produce really good animals. I actually had a woman come out to our farm. I don't let anybody in the rabbitry. So when somebody comes out, I take, animals that I might be offering to them, and I put them out on the lawn in carriers and stuff, and I meet them out there. So this lady came out one day and she was looking at the animals that I was offering her, and I had a rabbit tractor over there with my calls in it that were eating grass and growing out to get ready to go to be processed. And so she said to me, she said, well, what about them? And I'm like, they're not for sale. They're going to the butcher next week. Right. And she said, well, can I look through them? And I'm like, no. And she's like, well, why not? And I literally said, because they're not up to my standards. Right. And she literally said to me, she said, well, maybe your standards are too low or too high. In other words, it's like, I'm like, no. And my feeling is I never want to, that's my name that goes out on that animal. Right. Which that's one reason. And I think that is why you do sell animals, because people start getting, you get a reputation, or I told my wife recently, I'm starting to get a name. And for once in my life, it's good, but because you're only offering good animals, that goes around, and I think that's really important. When you're a steward, we're being given the stewardship of these animals. They've been placed in our hand. This is an awesome breed of animal, so I don't want to do anything to hurt it, we'll say, or to diminish it. I think Walter Garland is the one that had the vision of what it was, and some of the other people along the way kept it, passed it on to us. So it's our job to really be stewards of it, so that we can pass on. And that's also comes with promotion. When you go to shows or you're dealing with anybody that's contacting you, that you're promoting the breed in a way. And you asked me how to contact them. I find on Facebook, and like in the Virginia page, you're not allowed to sell animals on Facebook. So you can get in trouble if you're saying, hey, I got these animals for sale. You're going to get kicked off, and you're going to get the group kicked off. So what we do is every month in that group, we have a rehoming link, like we put a post up and it's at the top, and we call it the rehoming, and it has some rules, and nobody can put any animals on there that they're interested in as like an individual post. They can go into the rehoming post and say, hey, I'm looking to find a buck, that I'd like to give a new home to, and then they can private message that person. Or if you say, hey, I might say, I'm getting ready to sort 4 litters, if somebody might have some available space for one, you can private message me, kind of something like that. So, but every month we post that, and every month we go through and delete everything and start over. This will be April's rehoming post, and that's a good way to go about it. But I find just from posting, I try to be educational with my posts. I don't just post, quill had babies today, or quill won today, or whatever. I try to be educational with my posts, as well as bragging. I love what we do on the farm. So if you follow me on Facebook, you'll see a bunch of stuff like that. That is, but I always try to make it educational. So,
that's true.
Okay.
So when you're sorting through rabbits, about how many would you say you keep out of 40 rabbits? How many would you?
It all depends on, and who you're breeding to who. And sometimes it's, let me put this one in this one and see what happens, and I'm going to quote Margaret Funk. It's all about putting parts together, is how she puts it. So if you have an animal that, like I had a buck that I brought in that just gave me awesome rear ends on my animals, right? And width, okay? But he didn't have any shoulders. I mean, if you looked at him from the top, he looked like a teardrop, it's just no shoulder. But I got plenty shoulder in my animals, right? So that's where you're putting the parts together. And it's like, you're not going to put him with a skinny shoulder. You're going to look for who in here do I need to put him with, because he has a really nice butt end that I'd like to put on a couple of my animals, right? So putting those parts together really is the way you go about it, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
I think that answered the question.
Yeah, that's great. And if I go
the number you were
go ahead.
Out of 40, we'll say. It all depends, like I said, who you're putting together, who, and you do make mistakes. I had Molly, I bred her to a buck, and I did, out of her first litter was 8. I put 8 of hers in the freezer, and I'm like, I guess you're no good, And then I'm like, going to give you another chance, and I bred her to a buck that I had that was actually a grand champion, and that I brought in. Okay, I bred her to him, and out of her next litter of 8. I bet you 5 of them were keepers, and I sold several of them, and I kept one of them. So out of that litter, maybe 3 went in the freezer, and it's just a fluke, because that's not necessarily a number that you is usual. I would say out of 10, 2 or 3. If you are, and calling heavy is important when you're trying to really develop stock, and they multiply. So you have to. I mean, rabbits multiply. So it is important to just only keep the very best, and there's a time, and I don't want to emphasize, I do want to emphasize that you don't always have to have the best stock. I didn't start out with the best rabbit, but almost everything goes back to my original doe, Beulah. But I didn't really know anything when I got her. The breeder I got her from was honest and gave me a good rabbit, right? But I brought in several bucks that kept improving me, and I've improved. I think, and going to shows really helps you start to learn, because at a show you can be hands-on with people. The lady I just mentioned, Margaret Funk, we were at Richmond, and there was a young girl, Lexi, there with her mom, who was just looking at the rabbits and was interested in silver fox and just looked around all day and experienced the show. And when she was sitting there talking to her mom, and so her mom, I said to her, "Do you have any more questions?" And their mother said, "Well, how do you set up a silver fox?" And Margaret happened to be walking by, and she's been showing a long time and knows her stuff. And I said, "Margaret, you can answer this question better than anybody. She wants to know how to set up a silver fox." Margaret reached in and took a rabbit out of a cage and set it up on a thing. And we squatted down and we had a 10-minute seminar on how to set up a silver fox for a really experienced show lady, and that's invaluable. That's why, forget any ribbon I won that day. What we learned, and that little girl, Lexi, went on to, I said little girl, but she's not that little. She went on and bought a couple animals. Her sister bought 2 animals for me that she kept in her bathroom from November to Christmas to surprise her sister on Christmas with 2 rabbits. It's like, seriously? Wow. But, and Lexi, has been at the shows ever since and had a great time. And then was only in show B because she was in youth, but she had same breeding as this blue one I had, Sweet Pea. She bought from me, and she actually put her on the table and beat Sweet Pea. So I was actually thrilled to watch her beat me. It was pretty cool. So anyway, that's about it. I know we're going to run out of time.
Yeah,
I just want to mention real quickly I'm not going to show the pictures because we don't have time, but find some really good recipes. That's the best way to build good rabbits, and keep the best and eat the rest. I always tell people that, when you make a mistake, or the rabbits have a problem, maybe you lose rabbits in a litter or something. There are times that, for whatever reason, you lose a whole litter, or they freeze or whatever. Don't get discouraged. And the good news is with rabbits, it takes 31 days to produce another litter, and they're made for that. That's their nature, and unlike when we raise sheep or you raise cows or whatever, there was an article a long time ago where rabbits can produce more meat in a year than a cow. It takes a year for a cow to produce a baby, and then it takes another year before you can eat that baby. So rabbits are a great source in a lot of ways for not just meat, but I just love my rabbit. I feed every night at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. After my wife will go to bed, and then I go over and feed, because it's just my time of quiet and relaxing and being with my bunnies, So that's all I can tell you. I think. Is there any more questions? I know we're about out of time.
Well, we are wrapping it down. So let me see. I think we've got maybe 1 or 2 questions left. Melissa, thanks for joining us today. Melissa wants to know if you recommend any books on rabbits.
No. Yes. Eric Rupp and Colleen Rupp's book. I think it's Raising Rabbits for Meat or whatever it is. You guys have it on your website, right?
Yes. So if you go to Livestock
I've read, when I read different rabbit books, when I wanted information, I kept yawning through a lot of them and thinking I'm not learning anything. And when I found Eric's book, I just felt like I literally said out loud to my wife, now this is what I was looking for, the information. And he also comes from a perspective of the Livestock Conservancy. So that's the book I recommend to everybody.
Me too.
You can find it on our website. It's livestockconservancy.org. Yes. And then just go to the store.
This was not a paid announcement.
That's right.
But Eric, if you're listening, you can send me a check.
That's fantastic. There's lots of people saying thank you for explaining things and being very educational today. So thank you for that.
That's the goal.
Good. I know I've learned a lot. It sounds like everybody else.
I always feel like I should start off the guest opinion and not the opinion of.
Right. Well, as we close, Vernon, what's your favorite rabbit recipe?
I have a couple. If you don't have an Instapot when you get rabbits, you need an Instapot. We use that to cook a whole rabbit or 2, and put it on the poultry setting. Literally, a whole rabbit goes in frozen or unfrozen, doesn't matter. I usually thaw them out because sometimes they'll have the liver and stuff shoved up in the cavity, and I'll pull that out. But 1 cup of water, just salt and pepper, and on the poultry setting for like 45 minutes on high in the Instapot, which is pressure cooking it. What you'll get out, it'll be falling off the bones, and you just pick the meat and you can use it in every way. We make rabbit pizza. We'll put that meat on the pizza. You can take that meat when you pick it off and just make rabbit salad, like you make chicken salad. It's awesome. Just that kind of simple thing. But my favorite is pulled barbecued rabbit. And I still started in the Instapot and I finish in a big frying pan, but it's pulled barbecued rabbit. I make it up in a big batch with a couple rabbits at one time. And then I'll put it in like a small Tupperware containers, and it's a real easy meal to pull out and thaw out in the morning when you're thinking about what are we going to have tonight, and that's awesome way of making it. So
wonderful.
Oh, and I will say, if last but not least is they are putting out the Silver Fox Rabbit Club, the national club is, and if you go to their website, they are putting out there you go. They're putting out a cookbook right now. They're collecting recipes. And when they started that, several people said, Vernon, you are submitting your sausage recipe, aren't you? So if at the end, if people text me or go on Facebook and find me and ask me, I will send them my sausage recipe. But so what we do is they're having a contest right now, not a contest. They're collecting recipes that they're putting together in a cookbook that they're going to use to raise money. And that'll be available, I think, at the convention come October, or at the national show, one or the other, probably the convention. So that when that's available, that'll be for sale to help raise money, but it'll be nothing but rabbit recipes. My sausage recipe, when we process rabbits, I'll pick out a couple of the larger ones, and rabbits just don't have the fat on them, but a larger one might have a little bit, but I debone them. And then we grind them in regular meat grinder, and then we add spices. And it's basically, we've played around and finally come up with our best idea, which is basically a sage sausage. And it's like, it is so awesome. It is just really good. The only difference is because there's no fat. When you cook it on the frying pan, you put a lid over it and let it cook under.
That's amazing.
Juicy.
Stomach's grumbling. Like, I can't.
Anyway. And if you give them my phone number, I know you have it up there. If people want to text me, there you go. Don't call me, please. Send me a text, and I will send you my rabbit the recipe for the sausage if you want it.
And if you're just listening in, that number is 410-258-4593, and that is text only.
Thank you, Vernon. This has been a treat. I appreciate you being here. I think your message is one that everyone needs to hear. Rabbits or no rabbits, and I appreciate all you're doing for the breed. It's wonderful stuff.
Thank you. I think a lot of what I'm trying to convey applies to no matter what you're raising. I learned it raising Cotswold sheep, and go into shows. Don't think it's about winning all the time. A show is just one opinion of a person at a given moment. You can go and be the absolute best of breed out of a bunch of crap, which doesn't mean you have that awesome of an animal, or you can go to a show where there is awesome animals there and come in 5th place, and you need to go home knowing how awesome your animal was, so I think it's just a perspective. Showing is much more about community and having the opportunity to learn and show the world our breed or your breed. So
yeah,
thank you for you guys and what you do. I've been with you for a while, and I can't wait to be continuing what we're doing. And thank you for the opportunity to share Silver Fox. That's the only rabbits I raise, and I just think they're the only rabbit you need to raise. So
wonderful.
That's biased.
I love it. Well, thank you to Vernon, and thank you to all of our members and supporters for making educational programming possible. And thank you to ManaPro for making Rabbit Chats today possible. We appreciate all of you. I'm going to do my last little shameless plug. If you're not a member of the Livestock Conservancy, we would love to welcome you to the community. You can do that for $4.
Yeah, $4 a month, and not rabbit bucks either. $4 a month. You're a conservation champion, and it makes it easy. So that's what I do. I love what we do so much. I'm a member as well.
All right. My dog also agrees.
Yes.
Well, thank you, everyone. We'll be back next week with a Marketing Monday, and we will be talking about social media. So we hope that you'll be tuning in, and we hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon. We'll talk later. Bye.
Thanks.